December 15th of the year 533 AD, the Battle of Tricomarum. This was a battle in North Africa between the Byzantine general Belisarius and the remnants of the Vandal kingdom's army. This battle being a major Byzantine victory, the Vandal kingdom was effectively destroyed after this. Belisarius, of course, was one of the most famous generals in human history, known for this North African campaign as well as his campaign to retake the city of Rome in the Italian peninsula. This being done on behalf of the Byzantine Emperor Constantine, who is one of the most famous Byzantine emperors in history. He expended much effort to retake a lot of the land that had fractured away, following the fall of the Western Roman Empire. Of course, the Byzantine Empire was the Eastern Roman Empire. So reunifying them both into one Roman Empire would have been a big symbolic victory.
December 15th, 933 AD, this is the date of death for Emperor Li Siyuan. He is the second emperor of the later Tang dynasty. This guy was actually not a blood relative of any former emperor. He was adopted not by the previous emperor, but by the one before him. He became a high-ranking general under both of those emperors, before orchestrating a coup in the year 926. He took power in that year, he had a 7-year reign, and a fun quirk about him, he was functionally illiterate, and his, essentially, chief of staff was partially literate. For a little while, they had an arrangement where the chief of staff would try to read documents to him, but they eventually came up with a better solution. They founded a brand new institution, the Scholars of Duanming Hall, and they gave them the responsibility of reading documents to the emperor.
December 15th, 1161 AD, the assassination of the Jin Emperor in his military camp. This was part of the Jin Song Wars. The Jin was a pretty new kingdom at the time, while the Song was already established, the Song being the Han Chinese dynasty, and the Jin being Jurchens who, 1 or 2 generations before, had, with the help of the Song, rebelled against their former overlords to establish their own kingdom. And now, within living memory of that, here they are having a land dispute with the Song. This assassination follows shortly after a naval battle. It is the Battle of Kaishi, by the way, an early example of a battle that used gunpowder. And following that decisive Song victory, it was not the Song, but the military officers of the Jin's own camp, who conspired to kill their own emperor, successfully. December 15th, 1256 AD. This is the day that the Mongols enter and dismantle the Nizari Asmaili stronghold. That is inside the Alamut Castle in modern-day Iran. That stronghold, by the way, was home to the group that would be the namesake for the word assassin. This was part of the very long Islamic Golden Age. Medicine, astronomy, math, science, literature. The Arab world, stretching at the time all the way from Spain to Central Asia, had a very efficient road system and several centers of learning that allowed them to compile and build upon information in all these fields, causing a lot of human advancement in knowledge during this time. But with the Mongol invasion, that comes to an end. Genghis Khan toppled one empire after another, and now it was time for the Middle East. His army slaughtered millions, men, women, and children. They were known for making huge pyramids of decapitated heads, burning entire cities, and during this time, Genghis Khan fathered enough children that a significant portion of the world's population is descended from him today. December 15th, the year 1546 AD. On this date, a town called Ekenäs in Finland was founded by Gustav Vasa, or King Gustav I of Sweden. Sweden at the time controlled Finland. December 15th, 1778, did you know that the American Revolution was not contained in the 13 colonies? The Battle of St. Lucia. This was a battle between the British and the French navies near St. Lucia in the Caribbean. The French government at the time had openly joined the war against Britain. They were openly allying themselves with the American rebels. They were sending guns and ships to help them out, while at the same time, opportunistically taking swipes at some of the colonies that they had lost in the French and Indian War, as well as other colonies in the Caribbean. And the British, despite having their attention divided by the war on the mainland, also had to stay vigilant and defend themselves against the French in places like this. December 15th, 1791, the United States Bill of Rights officially becomes law. This comes a few years after the Constitutional Convention of 1787. All the states first ratified the Constitution itself. That established a clear form of government so everybody knew the rules and the guidelines of how the government was structured, how it operated. But then after that, a lot of people insisted that there needs to be a formalized list of rights, list of things that the government was not allowed to do to its citizens. As Jefferson had put it in the Declaration of Independence 15 years earlier, inalienable rights, God-given rights. And so they drafted a list of 10 amendments, including free speech, freedom of the press, right to bear arms, troops being quartered inside homes, fair and speedy trial. All these things and a lot of others were included in those first 10 amendments that became known as the Bill of Rights, and when all the states ratified them on this date, they came into effect. December 15th, 1836, the burning of the U.S. Patent Office. Yes, that's right, America had patents as far back as the time of the Founding Fathers, and the very first building that housed the office that did this work burned down in 1836. In the process, destroying nearly 10,000 patents, every single one issued by the federal government to date. Well, I guess they had to start all over with all that. December 15th, 1864, the Battle of Nashville in the American Civil War. This was one of the last big battles in the western part of the Civil War. 55,000 Union troops under command of General George Thomas, and 30,000, maybe a little less, Confederate troops under command of General John Bell Hood on the Confederate side. This one was a Union victory with around 6,000 Confederate losses. The Union also captured a bunch of artillery from this. Hood's army would be basically out of commission after this battle. December 15th, 1869, the proclamation of the creation of the Ezo Republic on Ezo Island, Japan. This was a short-lived republic on one of the Japanese islands, and the unique thing about this one is it was the first attempt to establish democracy in Japan. Kinda curious that this happened within just 2 decades of Commodore Perry's gunboat diplomacy. Other interesting thing was that voting in this republic was restricted to the samurai class. So although this technical nation-state lasted less than a year, it was significant in some ways, if not impactful. December 15th, 1890, this photograph is Sitting Bull. He is a famous chief of the Lakota Indians, who was killed on an Indian reservation when the U.S. government attempted to arrest him. This was a strained time between the U.S. government and the Indians, to say the least. For over a century, they've had not the best relations at all, and in fact, shortly after this, we would see the Wounded Knee Massacre. December 15th, 1899, in what is now South Africa. It is what is known as Black Week in the Second Boer War. This is the day of the Second Battle of Colenso, where a group of less than 5,000 Boer fighters with the Orange Free State went up against more than 3 times their number of British soldiers. The British, by the way, also had heavy guns and cavalry. However, the British lost this battle big time, and the Boers not only had very, very few losses, but they also managed to capture some of those heavy guns in the process. December 15th, 1914, in the First World War, the Serbian army recaptures the city of Belgrade, now the capital of Serbia, from the Austro-Hungarian army. December 15th, 1917, World War I. On this day, the nation of Russia signs an armistice with the Central Powers. Because, well, they have their own problems. You see, in the year 1917, Russia had not 1, but 2 changes of government, 2 separate revolutions. So when the nation first entered the war, they were still under the imperial system, under the Tsar. The Tsar was deposed and eventually murdered in what's known as the February Revolution, and all the revolutionary parties together tried to form a coalition government. But that ultimately fell apart in the October Revolution when the Bolsheviks decided that it was their way or the highway, so they held a second revolution, and that ultimately results in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. But in the meantime, within a couple months of having their entire governmental structure upended twice, Russia has more than enough reason to want to just sign an armistice and get out of that war. December 15th, 1939, this is the film premiere for Gone with the Wind, which is known as the highest-grossing film adjusted for inflation. This premiere was in Atlanta, Georgia. December 15th, 1942, during World War II in the Pacific. This day is the beginning of the Battle of Mount Austin, the Galloping Horse, and the Seahorse. This happened on Guadalcanal between the American and the Japanese forces. December 15th, 1943, the Battle of Arawe. This was part of Operation Cartwheel on Papua New Guinea. This is the Pacific theater of World War II. This is a photo of U.S. troops landing to try and take back part of the Japanese-held island. And this particular one was actually a diversion to try and draw Japanese military resources away from the location of a larger landing.
December 15th, 1943, this is the date of death for Fats Waller. He was a really groovy Harlem Renaissance musician. He did a lot for the jazz genre of music. Died at the age of 39. His health was not the best. He had problems with alcohol. He was deep into band life, on the road, doing tours, getting little to no sleep. And on top of that, he was astonishingly overweight by 1940 standards. He weighed in at, drumroll please, 285 pounds. Nevertheless, influenza combined with all of those other things caused him a much earlier death than he otherwise would have had. The story of his remains is interesting, though. He was cremated, and his ashes were flown in a plane over Harlem, where they were scattered over the city.
December 15th, 1945, this is a few months after the surrender of Japan in World War II. That nation gave the U.S. an unconditional surrender. That is a bit of a risky thing to give because the U.S. now had complete and total control over the entire Japanese mainland. And as part of that control, Douglas MacArthur on this day flexed his authority by ordering that Shintoism, the state religion of Japan, would no longer be the state religion of Japan. Shinto is actually one of the oldest existing continuous religions in the world, one of the few pre-axial religions that is still practiced by a lot of people. It's a religion that is very much tied to the Japanese land and the Japanese people. And now this American conqueror was ordering that the Japanese government no longer recognize. December 15th, 1960. This is the day that Richard Paul Pavlik was arrested. But before that, this guy tried at least once to kill the president, or at that time, president-elect. He had one good opportunity for it on December 11th, 4 days before this. He was going to use explosives to blow up JFK. However, he did not do it because JFK at the time was with his wife and children. Even murderers have morals, apparently. He absolutely intended to try again. However, he was arrested before he could make another attempt, and that date of that arrest is December 5th. December 15th, 1961, the Eichmann trial. Adolf Eichmann was a Nazi. He was a high-ranking member of Hitler's government. He successfully made it out of Germany. He lived in Argentina for a time after the war. He was tracked down by Mossad, that is Israel's intelligence agency, arrested in Argentina, brought back to Israel. Israel's court system charged him with crimes against humanity and crimes against the Jewish people. He was found guilty on this day, December 15th, and sentenced to death. And a little later, he was executed by hanging. December 15th, 1965, this was the launch date for Gemini 6A. This was part of NASA's Project Gemini program. The Apollo program, of course, is much more well-known because that is the one that put humans on the moon. But NASA did a lot of stuff leading up to that, including these Gemini flights, which gave them a lot of practical experience for launching a spacecraft into orbit. And as a matter of fact, a little while after this, Gemini 6A and Gemini 7 did make contact with each other while in orbit.
December 15th, 1966, this is the date of death for Walt Disney, founder of the Walt Disney Corporation. I think he needs no introduction. He and his corporation produced some amazing classics. His cause of death was complications relating to lung cancer. You see, Disney was a smoker, and he did not use filtered cigarettes. He died at the age of 65, and as far as I can tell, he was cremated 2 days later. For a very long time, I myself believed the story that he was cryogenically frozen, but apparently that is just an urban legend. Sad.
December 15th, 1970, this is the Soviet space program. What you're looking at is a replica of the spacecraft Venera 7, and this is the date that it landed on Venus. This is known as the first spacecraft to do a soft landing on another planet and transmit data back to Earth from there. December 15th, 1973, you are looking at a picture of John Paul Getty III. He is the grandson of an oil tycoon, J. Paul Getty, that was at one time one of the richest men in the world. This grandson, Getty III, while living in Rome, he was kidnapped by a criminal gang and held for ransom. He was held for a total of 5 months. The ransom was initially $17 million. The ransom had to be lowered, and the family had to receive the severed ear of this person before they agreed to pay it. And on December 15th, he was released and found alive. However, that's not where the story ends. As a result of this, he started having a problem with alcoholism, and he started doing some other drugs as well. Had a stroke at the age of 25 related to the drugs, and he ended up disabled for the rest of his life. He died at the age of 54. December 15th, 1978, this is, of course, a photograph of U.S. President Jimmy Carter. I am recording this in 2026 when Donald Trump is addressing one of Carter's greatest diplomatic failures. He, however, has done several great diplomatic failures. One of them happened on this day when he agreed to recognize the People's Republic of China and sever diplomatic relations with True China, the Republic of China, Taiwan. That, for those who don't know, is historically the legitimate government, but during the Chinese Civil War and World War II, they got chased off of the mainland and forced to set up shop on that one little island, Meanwhile, the communists took over the whole mainland, and Carter decided to recognize the communists as legitimate, so he could try and play ball with mainland China and hang the Democratic Republic out to December 15th, 2001, the Leaning Tower of Pisa. This has been a tourist attraction in Italy for hundreds of years, originally built more than 600 years ago. In 2001, it was undergoing some specialty renovations. Engineers took great pains to stabilize the structure and make it safe without doing away with the famous lean. And on December 15th of that year, it was reopened to the